The story begins by telling us about superheroes, fictional beings with powers that everyone loves. As a result, films featuring these characters gross around 3.5 trillion won annually. Additionally, their comic books have sold over 85 million copies, and the theme parks inspired by them have already welcomed more than 515 million people. It turns out that all these incredible things are nothing more than pure fiction. They are completely false. At this moment, we see a happy family with the son, asking his father to take him to see his hero. Suddenly, while walking, the two look up at the sky and see a strange figure floating. The little boy then gets super excited and shouts that it is a real superhero. His father is curious and wonders who that being could be that made his son so happy. People around also notice the figure, but think it's just a recording of a movie. But a guy in the crowd laughs and says that normal people don't understand anything. He then shouts with a smile on his face that that floating man is a real superhuman. Photographer comments on rumors of the existence of heroes and prepares to take the first photo. He then asks the superhuman to strike a different pose for his camera. The mysterious being asks if a pose like that would be good, and something terrible happens to the photographer. With that, a girl who was nearby is covered in a red liquid and goes into shock. His eyes widen in sheer terror as he realizes the horrific situation he finds himself in. Everyone around starts screaming in terror when they see that the supposed hero was a murderer. The crowd panics and starts running desperately away from that place. Amidst the chaos, people push and shout at each other to get out of the way. With the crowd screaming for help, the villain smiles and speaks to the children in a sinister manner. The terror on a man's face is evident as he screams desperately over and over again. Soon the noise stops and the crowd calms down a bit. Still very scared about the situation, the superhuman then makes a sign for silence and asks everyone to listen to a sound. Then, with a creepy smile and red eyes, he reveals his true intentions. In the sky, everyone sees several fireballs falling at high speed towards the city. At that moment, all of humanity was observing the beginning of its inevitable end. So, with the emergence of a real superhuman, the world faces an apocalyptic crisis. The person responsible for all this just smiles, thinking that mass destruction is a really cool thing. On the second day, the Western United States is completely destroyed by it. The next day, it is Greenland's turn to be completely wiped off the map. On the fourth day, northern France turned to ashes with 57% of the world annihilated. In just 5 days, that single being managed to cause all this global destruction. In response to this, governments around the world formed the Global Allied Forces. With that, they quickly approved a counterattack against the only superhuman. Meanwhile, the cause of all the chaos was relaxing peacefully on a paradisiacal beach. The man lying on a beach chair seemed to not have a care in the world. He was so relaxed that he even drooled a little while taking a nice nap. The choice of the Allied forces was simple and clear, as we see in the reflection of their glasses. The solution found was a 100-megaton hydrogen bomb dropped right on top of him. With that, a gigantic explosion illuminates the sky with an extremely intense light. From space, a satellite observes the massive destruction that has taken over that region. With the explosion, 3 neighboring countries disappeared from the map completely that day. But the superhuman who took the bomb head-on didn't even get a scratch. Meanwhile, at the White House, the situation was one of pure tension and utter despair. Breaking news shows that the villain has appeared and revealed his name as Friday. The President of the United States is shocked that even the nuclear submarines did not work. The leader, named James Logan, wonders what the true identity of that being is. At that moment, one of his men enters the room and announces that Friday is in the Capitol. The president is surprised, and the man says that the villain is waiting for him. Without thinking twice, James Logan orders everyone to go to the Capitol right now. There he prepares for the meeting, surrounded by heavily armed soldiers. One of his guards offers him a vest, but he refuses, saying it wouldn't do any good. He then adjusts his tie, as he needs to show confidence to the whole world. James then walks towards the building as he now represents all of humanity. Upon arrival, he introduces himself to Friday, and the two formally shake hands. The villain then smiles and says he was so anxious that he couldn't even sleep properly. With his eyes shining, the president ignores the provocation and asks what he wants. Friday repeats the question with an evil smile on his face, showing his satisfaction. He then responds that he wants him dead and attacks the president without any mercy. Friday says he's dying to see how the humans will react to their leader's death. Upon seeing the scene, the soldiers shout the president's name and begin shooting at the villain. However, the bullets do not cause any damage to the superhuman. They simply ricochet. With a quick movement, he throws the president's body away with his claws. The leader falls to the ground lifeless, while one of his men runs desperately towards him. Even though he was shot from all sides, the bullets didn't even make a scratch on his body. Friday then turns to the cameras that are broadcasting everything live to the world. He then asks if he is the only villain, and says that no one understands his motives. With that, he begins to tell a sad story about how he used to rummage through the trash to eat. His mother became ill and died because they had no money for hospital treatment. His father became addicted to alcohol and was shot dead by the police while stealing alcohol. The superhuman says he was very miserable and that the world never cared about him. Then he sarcastically asks if the story isn't touching enough. And with a crazy smile on his face, he reveals that everything he just said was a lie. News of Friday's madness and the president's death spreads around the world. This live broadcast was enough to throw the entire world into complete chaos. And with widespread panic, people began to lose hope in humanity. The spark of hope that remained was slowly fading for everyone. But even with all the despair, a small spark of hope still existed somewhere. In the middle of a snow-covered forest, we see smoke coming out of a small chimney. Inside the chimney, something or someone was watching everything from afar. Looking through it, we see only a deep, dark tunnel. Through a scope, it is possible to see the leads of several people moving. We then discovered a secret underground missile base in Switzerland. A scientist reports that the Neptune Spear project will be ready next week. The commander of the site says that the time for the final battle has finally arrived. Yakin says they will show Friday that humanity doesn't give up easily. At that moment, the roof of the base collapses with a deafening explosion. The commander is completely shocked and cannot believe what is happening. Friday appears and everyone wonders how he found the base 250 meters underground. People panic and scream for everyone to run desperately. The villain then looks at the missile and asks if they were doing something interesting. The doctor goes to the commander and says that now everything is over for them. With a serious expression on his face, the leader seems to accept his fate. The soldiers at the base, even though terrified, prepare to fight the invader. With trembling hands, they point their weapons at the superhuman. The commander then calls Dr. Ju Songen and orders him to evacuate with the civilians. He passes the leadership to the doctor, saying that he is now the new leader. The scientist is confused and doesn't understand what Yakin means by that. Yakin insists that he must survive and rally people with conviction for the future. The commander continues saying that the doctor needs to gather those who want to protect humanity and their families. Yakin then finishes by saying to show the world that humanity will never lose to the villain. The moved scientist says goodbye, saying it was an honor to serve under his command. With that, the doctor starts running, while Yakin turns to face his fate. Friday pretends to wipe away a tear and mocks the commander for being so nice. Despite the fear, the soldiers remain firm and continue to point at the enemy. The leader then addresses his troops and says that it was an honor to have led them all. He continues his speech and says that even if no one remembers their names, he will remember each of them while holding a detonator in his hand. Soldiers prepare to give their lives in the last battle for humanity. Everyone points their weapons ready for the final fight against the superhuman. Friday just smiles sideways, finding the whole situation very amusing. The scene then shifts to a snowy forest, where a man shoots with a rifle. He manages to hit a deer that was passing by at that exact moment. The boy then lets out a sigh of relief in the cold mountain air. Satisfied, he says he finally managed to catch his prey for dinner. On the outskirts of Seoul, it has been more than 5 years since the Friday incident. The animal is now lying lifeless in the snow after being shot. The hunter takes a deep breath, looking relieved to have secured his meal for the day. This young man's name is Bak Dawa, and he is 27 years old. The scene jumps forward 5 years, and we are in Seoul, South Korea, where everything is in ruins. Walking through the snow, the boy steps on an old poster with the face of the villain Friday on it. Carrying the game on his back, he finally arrives at the gate of his house, in the middle of the blizzard. Upon entering through the door, the hunter announces that he is back while carrying his equipment and prey. However, the young man has a confused expression when he sees something unexpected inside his house. Sitting on the floor are 2 little boys, and Dahua wonders what they are doing there. Suddenly, the blond boy looks at him with wide eyes of surprise. The little boy then points to the hunt and says excitedly that he knew Dahua would be able to catch the deer. As a reward, the blond boy says that the 2 bear-shaped sweets are now his, but the boy named Bang Junsik has already taken the sweets, and the blond boy shouts for him to give them back. Then a chase begins, and the blondie threatens Junsik as they run around another child. Meanwhile, a 3rd child who was drawing just watches the confusion of the other 2. The chaos continues with the 3 running around the room and yelling at each other for candy. Seeing all that mess, the hunter looks exhausted and angrily shouts Bang Junsik's name. In the midst of destroyed Seoul, that house is the only noisy place, and also their hiding place. With that, he begins to have a flashback of when he met those little ones for the first time. The memory takes him back 4 years, as he walked thinking about what he would eat. He then decides he wants a specific noodle, but hears someone yelling for a door to be opened. At the door of a convenience store, 2 men threaten to break in if no one opened the door for them. When the guys notice the boy, one of them says they are not bad people and asks if he has the noodles. The boy just stands in silence watching the 2 strange men standing in front of him. He then recognizes one of them as a store employee and comments on the tense atmosphere. At that, the blonde calls out to him with a furious look and a vein popping out on his forehead. Without any warning, the guy attacks with a hammer, screaming if he wants to turn into a biscuit. With a quick movement, Doa narrowly dodges the blow that was going to hit his head. The attacker then falls to the ground, feeling a sudden pain in his body without understanding the reason. He soon realizes that our protagonist hit him in the liver while dodging the hammer. The young man wonders how this was possible, and Dawa complains that the employee is not friendly. At this point, the older man calls him fried noodles with a very serious expression. The big guy then charges forward and tries to land a powerful punch on our hero, but the boy blocks the attack and uses the enemy's momentum to strike him. Dawa's technique hits the bigger man squarely with a powerful, devastating impact. The big guy smiles and says he's the first one to make him use that technique on someone, but the man's expression changes to shock and pain as he stammers the name of the move. Dawa finds that old man very strange as he carries him on his back without understanding anything. The blonde on the floor then asks Dawa to take the old man with him, leaving the boy confused. We then see the blonde carrying the big guy on his back, complaining about his weight. After all the confusion, our protagonist finally gets the pasta he wanted. He smiles, saying that he only has one left, and the angry blonde tells him to be quiet. Dawa then says he's going to the bathroom, and a child's voice asks if the old people have gone yet. The boy approaches the bathroom door, but it is locked, and he asks if there is anyone there. Inside, he finds 3 children and a sick woman who threaten him not to come closer. One of the girls then yells at the other boy, calling him an idiot for thinking he's the bully. One of the boys tries to calm the fight by saying that they need to stick together at times like this, but the other boy blames him, saying that it was his idea to go to the store, and that's why they are in danger. The little girl also defends herself and denies having agreed to the idea of going to that place. Seeing the situation, The boy tries to negotiate with Dahua to resolve everything peacefully, but the little girl doesn't want to talk and attacks our hero with a colorful broom. The other boy also joins the fight and tries to hit Dahua with the handle of a squeegee. Bang Junsik says the time has finally come to showcase his baseball talent. With a shout, he then swings the club with all his strength, stating that it is an art. The problem is that the blow was so bad that he ends up hitting his friend instead of the protagonist. The boy who was hit falls to the ground trembling and curses Junsik for his poor aim with the bat. The little baseball player is paralyzed with shock when he sees that he has injured his teammate. Afraid of the other's reaction, he runs and clings to Dawa's leg asking for help. Dawa ignores the commotion and goes to see the sick woman, but the children scream at him not to touch her. He then places his hand on her forehead to check her fever as she breathes heavily. With that, the boy takes his backpack off his back, and one of the boys asks what he is going to do. He takes some medicine from his bag and hands it to the little girl, who is still holding the broom. He explains that it is an antipyretic for her to take twice a day, and says he just came to get food. He apologizes for the scare and says he's leaving right now, leaving the little girl confused. When the boy turns to leave, little Junsik is still clinging to his leg. The protagonist asks the boy to let him go, and the boy ends up falling to the ground awkwardly. At that point, the other boy starts fighting with Junsik, accusing him of hitting him on purpose. The girl then tells the others that they need to make a decision to survive. The scene changes, and we see our hero walking down the street, while the children follow him carrying the girl. The little girl says they are not following him, but that they happen to be going in the same direction. Despite the lame excuse, it was obvious that the little ones were going after him. The three continue walking together through the ruined city without a clear destination. With a smile on his face, the boy comments that it does seem like they are following him. Seeing that the little ones are exhausted, he asks if they don't want to go with him. The girl is surprised, and from that day on, the four of them lived together as a family in that house. Over time, our hero realized that they had become a truly close-knit family. The woman who is sick appears and says that the boy's clothes are very dirty. With a smile, she praises him, saying that he tried very hard to get the hunt. The young man says he brought the deer, and the girl says she prepared a hot bath for him. He then suggestively asks if he should take off his clothes for the shower, and he adds to the question, wanting to know if he should do that right there in front of her. The girl laughs and jokes, telling him to just take off the top part, and asks what he thought. The boy is embarrassed and says he didn't think about anything while showing his muscular back. The girl asks him for his clothes to carry, but the boy says he doesn't need because he can carry everything. She then comments that his body has improved a lot, and we see how strong the young man really is. As she leaves the room, the woman wonders which lucky girl will end up with him in the future. The compliment leaves the protagonist embarrassed, and with his cheeks completely red with embarrassment. One of the boys calls him and asks what life is, and then asks him to teach him how to fight. The scene then cuts to night, and we see the buildings in ruins, with a light in the distance on the horizon. Outside, the boy observes the night landscape with a thoughtful expression on his face. The woman then approaches him from behind and calls his name as he admires the view. She says it must be cold and offers him a hot drink, and he thanks her for the gesture. The two look at the starry sky, and the girl comments that she has never seen so many stars in Seoul before. She then warns that despite having food, the supplies to leave are almost gone. Because of this, she is worried about going to the market and asks if it is dangerous. The young man calms her down by saying that there is no one around, as they haven't seen any footprints for a month. He also remembers that Junsik's birthday is coming up, and we see the children sleeping, so he wants to go to town to give the boy something delicious to eat that day. The woman looks at him with a worried look as they both drink hot tea on the rooftop. With that, she asks if it isn't too difficult for him to have to take care of all of them alone. The protagonist looks at her with a calm and serious expression before finally responding. He then reveals that she and the children are the first and only real family he has ever had. Upon hearing this, the girl's eyes filled with tears, and she was very moved by his response. To break the mood, the boy says it's cold and suggests they go inside to sleep. The girl then jokes and asks if they are husband and wife since they consider themselves a family. The question takes the young man by surprise, and he turns red repeating what she said. With a smile she says it was just a joke to see his reaction. He gets all flustered and stutters saying he didn't like the joke, but then corrects himself. The scene then shifts to the next day with the group, walking through the snow. Children are amazed at the amount of snow that looks like clouds, but one of the boys complains, saying he hates the cold and wants to leave soon. He then hurriedly asks Dalwa to walk faster so they can return home. With his breath coming out due to the cold, the boy's glasses fog up. After walking a little further, the little ones begin to play in the fluffy snow. Dalwa joins in the fun and threatens to turn them all into snowmen. The woman also joins in the fun and prepares a snowball with a smile on her face. Suddenly, the protagonist is hit by a snowball and falls to the ground without understanding. The girl then rolls a giant snowball, and the children run desperately. After the snow fight, everyone comes together to build a huge snowman. With teamwork, they manage to assemble a 3-part snowman. Finally, the group arrives at their destination, a large market called a mart. The little ones run ahead excitedly shouting about what they are going to catch inside. But the boy notices something strange, and his gaze becomes serious as he asks them to go slowly. He then wonders why the tree branches are so strange in that place. One of the boys calls him in a hurry, telling him to go to the market quickly. The little one jokes that if he is late, all the snacks will be his alone. The protagonist then replies that he is already going and runs to catch up with the rest of the group. As he walks, he thinks that what he saw must have just been the wind and ignores the strangeness. He also reflects that he did not know what kind of events the future held for them. Once inside the market, the boy gives a whistle to each of the children. One of the boys asks what that is, and the other tells him to shut up and get it. Our hero then organizes the groups with Junsik and Young Jae into a duo, and the woman with little Seoa forming the second pair to explore the store. He instructs everyone to stay in pairs and not go to other floors of the market. He also reminds them to use the whistle in case something unexpected happens. With the rules defined, he tells everyone to meet there in an hour. The woman and girl do go to the clothing section to look for something to wear. The girl is unsure whether she should get bigger clothes since children grow quickly, but she decides it's best to get clothes that fit them perfectly now. Suddenly, little Seoa calls her in an excited voice to show her something. The girl then appears dressed in clothes similar to the woman's and says she imitated her. The woman compliments the little girl, saying that she is much prettier and that she could be a model. The little girl is super happy with the compliment and asks if she really thinks that. The woman asks if the little girl wants more clothing recommendations, and she answers yes, very excited. Meanwhile, in the book section, Young Jae is rushed by his friend to pick something right away. Junsik remembers that they came for his birthday and points to the snacks he wants as a gift. With his backpack full of treats, little Young Jae tells his friend to stop complaining so much. Young Jae then asks how many more snacks the other intends to get, and he defends himself by saying that he didn't even get many. The weight of the backpack is so much that the boy's feet barely touch the ground, and his friend doubts that he can handle it. Junsik says not to worry, because he will fill his friend's backpack too, and Young Jae panics. Seeing his friend's despair, the little boy complains that he is too noisy. Suddenly, the weight of the backpack throws him off balance, and he begins to fall backwards slowly. With that, the boy falls onto the floor, and all the snacks scatter across the store aisle. Young Jae is left lying in the middle of the mess, and Junsik laments over his lost snacks. Furious with the situation, Junsik threatens his friend, while a can of potatoes rolls away. The boy then laments his sweets, but soon runs after the can of potatoes that rolled down. With a quick movement, he finally manages to catch the can before it goes away. He smiles and says he can't let any of them escape, and we see that he has stopped at the games section. Suddenly, his expression changes, and he becomes confused as he notices something strange in front of him. Hidden behind a pile of snacks, a mysterious hand suddenly appears. Sitting in the middle of the mess, young Jouts shouts his friend's name, and a can of potatoes flies towards him. We then see young Jay alone in the hallway surrounded by snacks, without understanding anything. The boy then looks around and wonders where his friend went so suddenly. On the other side of the market, Dawa walks alone through a corridor full of pipes. He then climbs up a metal walkway, still feeling that something is wrong there. The boy comments that there are no traces of people and wonders if the broken trees were caused by the wind. He finds it strange that the market still has so many products and deduces that people came here with that. He wonders if everyone left without taking anything, or if they were unable to leave. When he opens a door, he finds several bodies and realizes that the place was not safe. His eyes widen at the horrific scene, and he goes on high alert. The young man then thinks that there are now more dead than alive in the world. Over time, he and the others became accustomed to the constant presence of death. He remembers an old news story that estimated the death toll at 5.7 billion. The whole world dropped countless bombs on Friday, but that only made the situation worse. The people of Seoul fled the war in terror and scattered across the country. But ironically, Seoul was the city least affected by the villain's destruction. Suddenly, the protagonist looks at his watch and sees that an hour has passed. Back at the meeting point, the woman and little Siwa wait for the others. The girl then calls out to him excitedly, while the woman waves to him from afar. The boy asks if Siwa found many things she liked, and she replies that it's a secret. He then asks about the other boys, and the woman says she hasn't seen them and is worried. The girl then says that they are idiots and must be fighting over snacks. Suddenly, young Jay appears with a bruised face, and the girl is scared. Do asks young Jay where Junsik is, but the boy answers confused. He says he thought his friend had gone ahead, but is surprised to learn that he didn't arrive. The protagonist then acts quickly and takes his gun from inside the bag he was carrying. He hands it to the woman and tells her to take the others to the safe engine room. As he walks away, he says he's going to check out the place young Jay mentioned, and the girl gets worried. With a confident smile, he jokes that this is what husbands do. The woman is embarrassed by the joke, but he quickly says he is just joking again. Before leaving, he warns that the first person to find Junsik must blow the whistle to warn him. The group that remained behind begins to call out the name of the missing boy. Young Jay angrily yells that Junsik is dead if he shows up now. In another corridor, the protagonist also calls out the name of the little lost boy. He walks through the aisles full of shelves, looking for any sign. The boy shouts for Junsik to respond if he is hearing his voice, but gets no response. Suddenly, he finds a can of potatoes lying on the floor near a door. When he picks up the can, he recognizes it as Junsik's favorite snack and hears a noise. He hears someone talking about a special move, and his gaze becomes attentive and serious. In the game room, he finds Junsik playing video games and calls him by name. The boy turns around and smiles, saying he's going to end the game, and Dawa sighs in relief. The boy approaches and asks what the little one is doing there, and he invites him to play. Dawa then scolds him and says that everyone was worried about his disappearance. The little boy starts crying and says that an old man called him to play first. Hearing this, Dawa's eyes turn red with anger, and he goes into alert mode. The boy asks if he was really an old man, and the boy confirms excitedly. Junsik goes on to say that the man was terrible at games, and that he flicked his forehead. With shining eyes, the protagonist looks back with a serious and somber expression. He then takes his weapon and prepares for the fight that is to come. The boy doesn't understand anything and asks why his friend is acting like that. With the weapon in hand, the boy positions himself to attack, and his reflection on the floor shows his fury. At this point, the supposed old man complains about having lost again, and the protagonist looks at him. The mysterious man then turns around, and Dawa is shocked to recognize who it was. The game's screen shows the game over message, and that Friday lost the match. The villain complains that he has already lost 9 times, and that the boy's flick hurts more than he thought. With an expression of pure fury, he gets angry and says that it is very irritating. We then see a man approaching our hero's house with a serious expression. He tells the woman that she needs to leave the house right now because there is no more time. The girl doesn't understand anything and asks why Dawa wants her to leave the house suddenly. The man asks if she saw anything strange at the market with a very worried look. The scene returns to the market and Junsik repeats that the old man was very bad at the game. The little boy is confused by his friend's reaction and asks what's wrong. The video game screen goes black and the protagonist stares at the villain with a look of pure surprise. The protagonist recognizes the villain and is shocked to see him there in front of him. Friday complains about the 9th consecutive defeat and says that the boy's flick hurts a lot. Seeing the situation, the boy knows he doesn't have time to think and needs to act quickly. He understands that he needs to hold out as long as he can for his family to escape. With his eyes red with fury, he prepares to fight with all his strength. The villain then notices the young man's scary look and asks, "What's wrong?" He says just because he lost the game doesn't mean it won't hurt him. The antagonist reveals that he promised to play hide and seek with the children. With an evil smile, he warns the boy to run away because he won't lose next time. Back home, the mysterious man says he will protect his family at any cost. The woman doesn't understand anything and asks what's happening and why he's like that. The man's eye glows red as he prepares for something terrible. He then moves forward to attack the woman with an expression of pure rage. The woman narrowly avoids it and wonders what happened to make him act like that. In the backyard, they find a pile of Christmas presents and are confused. The woman wonders who left it there, and the man hurries her to tidy up. He tells her to pack only the essentials because they need to leave immediately. Meanwhile, the children hurriedly pack their backpacks for the escape. Suddenly, we see a person's hand with a first place stamp on it. The person wonders if being number 1 is a reason to be happy and celebrate with others. The boy wonders what happiness means as he looks at the stamp on his hand. He remembers seeing a mother comforting her son, who was crying because he hadn't come in first. At that moment, he didn't understand the feeling because he never had a family to support him. The scene changes, and we see the group crossing a snow-covered bridge. The little ones talk about Santa Claus and say that he doesn't give presents to those who cry. One of them boasts that he never cries, and that's why he always gets gifts. The other retorts that he is a bad boy, and that is why Santa Claus doesn't like him. Junsik then reveals that Santa Claus doesn't exist, and that it was always Dawa who gave the presents. The woman asks how much longer they need to walk in the middle of that blizzard. The boy calms her down by saying that it is getting dark, but that they will soon reach their destination. He explains that after crossing the river, they don't need to worry about anything anymore. One of the boys then calls him and asks what he wants to know at that moment. The boy points to several snowmen and asks why there are so many there. The protagonist is silent for a moment, and the little one says that they are ugly. Dowa then says not to mind, and that they are just normal snowmen. The scene then focuses on a heavy snowstorm that makes it difficult for everyone to see. Little Sioa complains of tiredness, and the woman encourages her to keep walking. She tells the girl to be strong, and that they won't be there long, and the little girl agrees. The woman then asks Dalwa when they will arrive as everyone is on edge. He reassures her by telling her to hold on a little longer, because they are almost there. The protagonist reveals that he actually doesn't know when they will reach their destination. He explains that a phenomenon of intense snowfall has begun and visibility is very low. The climate has changed drastically and now it snows in Korea like it's in Siberia. Suddenly, little Sioa faints from cold and exhaustion in the middle of the blizzard. She falls into the soft snow without the strength to continue the long and exhausting walk. Everyone despairs when they see the fallen girl, and the woman screams her name in terror. She tries to wake the little girl up by telling her to go home and sleep, but it's no use. The group doesn't know what to do and Dawa feels helpless without knowing how to help. In the midst of despair, a mysterious man approaches with a flashlight in his hand. He then observes them for a moment, before making an important decision. With a serious look, he tells everyone to follow him if they don't want to die there. The man takes them to an apartment in an abandoned building for shelter. The children are impressed by the size of the place and comment on the heat. The woman then asks the children to thank the man for helping them. The man tells them that the bathroom is there, but that there is not much hot water. Dalwa puts little Seo to bed, and the woman asks the children not to come in. The boy then thanks the man for saving them, all from the blizzard. The man asks how they are sane with so much snow falling outside. He then bows in thanks, and the man warns him not to regret it later. The protagonist wonders if that man is a good person, but concludes that he saved them. Despite this, he finds it dangerous to rest there, and the man agrees with a smile. The woman then asks if she can use one of the rooms, and Dalwa says she would anyway. The girl asks if they really need to leave, and the protagonist confirms with a serious look. She then tells Dalwa to take a bath first, because he worked really hard that day. With a sad look, she apologizes for making him wait longer in the blizzard. The boy apologizes and admits that, because of him, everyone almost died on the way. She agrees but comforts him by saying that she understands that he always thought of them first. With a loving gesture, she touches his face and reminds him that they are family. With that, she brushes his hair away and says he looks much better with his forehead showing. Dalwa then compliments back, saying that she also looks better with her hair down. He then shows off his new look with his hair styled and bangs up. The scene cuts to the mysterious man looking at a photo of his family. He smokes a cigarette while looking at the photo with a sad and melancholic look. Alone in a room, he wonders where his family is now and sighs in sadness. After bathing, Dalwa tells the woman that he is finished and that she can go now. The girl then calls little Seoa to go take a bath with her, and the girl agrees. Alone in the room, the protagonist opens his backpack and takes out a map from inside. He looks at the city map carefully, tracing a route in his mind. He notes that they have crossed the river, but that there is still no information about the location. With that, the boy plans his next route to ensure everyone's safety. But he knows his priority is to stay as far away from Friday as possible. Little Junsik then offers him potatoes with an innocent smile on his face. Dalwa approaches and asks if the boy talked to the man at the market. He replies that no, and that they just played together, but the protagonist is suspicious. Suddenly, he hears the villain's voice, and his gaze fills with fear and surprise. Outside, Friday appears and says he found him, leaving the boy in a panic. Junsik points to the villain and says he's the bad old man from the game, and Dalwa despairs. Friday then boasts that he wanted hide and seek and prepares to attack. With his face full of wounds, the protagonist shouts for Junsik to run as fast as possible. Dalwa is then hit head-on by a powerful attack from the superhuman. The explosion destroys part of the building and throws the boy into the air with the impact. He falls to the ground badly injured as snow continues to fall around him. With his face covered in blood, he looks up at the sky and sees the villain approaching. He then yells at Junsik to hold the woman's hand and not let go under any circumstances. The woman tries to save the boy, but Friday stops her with a single blow. In his last moments, the boy remembers his family and happy times. He remembers meeting the children and how close they became. Also remember playing in the snow and how they built the snowman together. All the happy moments you spent together flash through your mind like a movie. The villain then destroys the whole place with an energy blast, and everything ends. Even though he was injured, the boy thinks he needs to protect his family at all costs. To him, his family means more than anything else in the world. Amidst the destruction, the woman and children cry and call out her name. The little ones scream, asking him to save them because they don't want to die there. The boy remembers the promise that they were a family and is filled with fury. With a cry of despair, he refuses to accept the cruel fate that awaits them. He then stands up, wounded and panting, in the middle of the rubble of the building. With tears in his eyes, he promises that he will save them soon and will not give up. Suddenly, he realizes he survived the explosion and sees the mysterious man. The man says that the snow cushioned their fall and that luckily they didn't die. He then points to a snowy mountain and says he doesn't know about his family. With his hands trembling and covered in blood, the protagonist despairs even more. He runs through the rebels shouting everyone's name in the hope of an answer. He continues to scream, desperately asking for someone to please answer. The mysterious man watches him with a sad look and tries to calm him down. He tells the boy to stop because they have already looked everywhere possible. Dawa refuses to believe it and says his family is alive somewhere. The man is then surprised by the young man's conviction and looks at him. The man angrily asks if he plans to die if his family is dead. The boy answers yes, because a world without his family has no value to him. With tears in his eyes, he says that was the first real family he had. Suddenly, a man appears and says that they are alive, surprising everyone. The man says he saw what happened after Friday appeared and knows their whereabouts. Dawa stands up and asks if it's true that his family is alive and well. With a smile of relief, he asks if the four are really alive, and the man confirms. But the man says he won't tell so easily and that he's hungry. He then orders 20 portions of food, and preferably with spicy tuna. The old man accuses him of lying to get food, but the man vehemently denies it. The man is angered by the accusation and his face turns red with anger. He then curses the old man for making him look like a bad person and glares at him with hatred. The man defends himself, saying he did his best to help, and the two begin to argue. Dawa then kneels down and begs for help with his bloodied hands. With a desperate smile, he asks what else the man wants besides tuna. The man smiles with satisfaction and makes a list of foods he wants in exchange for the information. We then see the protagonist preparing to go out in search of food. The old man asks if he will really believe that strange guy and advises him. He warns him that the man is using his family as a hostage and that he needs to find out the truth. Dawa wonders why the old man is helping him since they are not close. The old man then reveals that he knows what it's like to lose a family with a sad look. From this we understand that he also went through a terrible loss in the past. He says the world now uses even the smallest hope to survive and move forward. The old man advises him not to die easily after having survived for so long. With a determined look, he tells the boy to live until the end, no matter what happens. The protagonist then thanks them for their help the night before and prepares to leave. He bows in thanks and promises that if he gets the chance, he will repay your kindness. With that, he sets off alone through the rebel in search of food for the mysterious man. The scene then cuts back to the present with a street light covered in vegetation. The woman calls out to Dawa, and he asks what happened that made her so worried. She explains that the children have not yet returned home and that it is her fault. The guy calms her down by saying that nothing has happened yet and that she doesn't need to worry. He then tells her to stay home in case they come back while he goes looking for them. The protagonist sets out to look for the children, wondering where they might have gone. He finds it strange because they should have already returned and approaches the door. Upon opening the door, he is greeted with an explosion of colorful confetti. The woman and children shout happy birthday to him, celebrating with a cake. He then understands that the children's disappearance was because of the surprise party. One of the boys explains that since he didn't know his birthday, they decided it would be today. The woman apologizes for the surprise and says the children wanted to make the cake themselves. Little Sioa hurries him, saying that the candles on the cake are melting fast. Dawa is left speechless by the surprise, and everyone looks at him with happy smiles. He remembers the feeling of love and happiness he felt on that special day. We then see a scene of a fight between two strange characters and someone asking them to stop. The boy smiles with his eyes closed, remembering the joy he felt with his family. The scene returns to the rebel, and we see Dawa handing the food to the man. The man is impressed by the amount of snacks and sweets the boy brought. He says it's a complete meal and thanks you for the delicious feast. Dalwai explains that he brought everything because he didn't know what he liked, and the man compliments him. The protagonist then gets straight to the point and asks where his family is now. The man creates suspense and says that he needs to listen very carefully to what he is going to say. He then says that Friday showed up and bombed the apartment where they were staying. With an evil smile, he says that after that the villains simply disappeared. The boy is shocked and speechless by the man's terrifying revelation. He doesn't believe what he heard and thinks he misunderstood what the man said. The man then jokes that maybe he forgot because he was hungry and asks for more tuna. Doa stares at him with hateful eyes and realizes he has been tricked. Angrily, he asks how the man dares to use his family to get food. The man then gets angry and tells him not to think that he is the only one with a family. Suddenly, several muscular men with red eyes appear behind him. The protagonist turns and faces the men who threaten him with evil looks. One of them says he also wants to find his family and talks about the woman he's been seeing. The man makes a disgusting comment about the woman, and Dawa glares at him with pure hatred. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist advances and attacks him with a powerful punch. The blow hits the man squarely, sending him flying backwards with the devastating impact. With eyes red with fury, Dawa continues to attack without any mercy. He unleashes a series of brutal punches on the man, who has no chance to fight back. The violence of the blows is so great that the ground begins to crack with the force of the impact. The other men are shocked by the scene and cannot believe what they see. The group leader angrily yells at the protagonist for attacking him by surprise. He complains that talking and hitting at the same time is cheating and that he could have died. The man then says he knows this with a calm and frightening expression. With his face covered in blood, the boy reveals that he did it on purpose to kill him. He then remembers that the man said he had killed people and that it wasn't his first time. It all starts in a snow-covered city where the weather seems very cold and desolate. One of the bullies starts laughing and mocking the protagonist, asking if he's really going to hurt anyone. He continues the provocation by questioning whether the hero is lying and whether he knows who he is talking to. Then the man boasts that everyone there is a former athlete who only lives to eat and train. In this, he explains that the group was trained to be beaten since they were just small children. The brute angrily shouts that they are on a completely different level than our hero. Even surrounded and injured, the protagonist remains standing, facing everyone with a calm expression. Without warning, one of the henchmen grabs our character's hair forcefully, trying to intimidate him. Soon, a blonde man appears holding him and introduces himself as the second-best welterweight boxer. The protagonist sarcastically responds that the fighter's feat is truly incredible. Then, with a bloody face and red eyes, he asks where his family is. The boxer gets angry at the question and lands a punch right in the boy's face. Then the fighter gets furious and shouts, asking if the boy didn't understand what he said. He goes back to yelling about his position in the boxing rankings as he continues to beat up the hero. To finish, the man challenges the protagonist to try to land a single punch on him if he is confident. Without hesitation, the fighter steps hard on our hero's head to finish him off once and for all. But the blonde realizes that the boy hasn't let go of his leg and asks why he doesn't respond. Falling to the ground, the protagonist simply says that the bully doesn't know anything about his family. With incredible strength, the hero squeezes the man's leg, breaking it in the process. The boxer falls screaming in pain, while our character slowly gets up. One of the other henchmen gets angry and tells the fighter to call a doctor for being pathetic. In anger, he orders all his companions to attack the protagonist at once. In front of the group, the hero just plants his feet on the ground, preparing for the fight to come. In the blink of an eye, he advances at an absurd speed towards the enemies. The first opponent barely has time to react before he receives a punch straight to the face. Our character then begins to fight everyone at the same time without showing fear. He moves with agility, dodging the blows and hitting each of the henchmen. One of the brutes freezes when he sees the hero's shadow coming towards him. With no chance to defend himself, the man is hit by a powerful kick right in the stomach. Immediately afterwards, the protagonist jumps and lands a violent elbow on another opponent. Even covered in blood, the hero faces the next opponent with a cold and frightening gaze. With a powerful hook, the protagonist hits the opponent's chin, throwing him backwards. He doesn't stop and continues the sequence of blows, while the brute screams in pain with each punch. The force of the attacks is so brutal that the man has no chance to defend himself or fight back. Fallen to the ground, the henchman can only mumble with his face, all bruised, and without the strength to get up. Then, our character stands with a menacing aura after defeating all the enemies there. At that moment, another fighter appears running at high speed towards the protagonist. The new opponent jumps into the air, preparing a flying kick to catch the hero by surprise. But the boy counterattacks with a powerful kick right in the middle of his opponent's blow. Suddenly, a giant shadow appears in front of our character, who is on the ground. We see that he is a huge, muscular man with several scars on his face, looking at him seriously. The big guy gets angry and says that the protagonist has crossed the line and that he won't go easy on him. He also adds that if they were in a ring, the fight would have ended a long time ago. With that, the muscular man quickly advances and begins to apply an immobilization technique. The boss traps the hero's neck with his legs in a blow to finish the fight once and for all. The boss screams at the top of his lungs as he presses the blow, trying to finish off our hero. But even though he's trapped, the protagonist tells him to stop talking and get it over with. Suddenly, with an absurd amount of force, the boy manages to free himself and throws the big guy to the side. At that moment, we heard a horrible noise and saw that the bones in the opponent's arm had broken. The impact was so strong that the boss felt a pain he had never felt in his life. The muscular man falls to the ground screaming in despair and pain, unable to move properly. He looks at his broken arm in panic and begins to scream repeatedly for it. Then, to end it all, the protagonist lands a powerful kick on the enemy's neck. After the fight, our hero walks over the bodies of the henchmen with a frightening aura. The remaining bullies wonder if he is human, and one of them tells the others not to back down. Then he points to a pile of baseball bats with nails in them for use in the fight. One of the henchmen says that not even a rabid dog could handle a stick, and everyone shouts to attack. With sticks in hand, the men prepare for the final attack against the protagonist. But everyone there was feeling the same thing as they looked at our hero standing still. It was an instinctive feeling of defeat because they knew they couldn't win at all. Seeing the hero's strength, one of the henchmen throws the stick away and says he doesn't want to fight anymore. Soon the others agree and also give up the fight without the courage to face the protagonist. But the chubby guy who started the fight is shocked to see all his men retreating. He can't believe the whole group lost, even after they attacked together with everything. In complete despair, the man screams that the whole situation makes no sense. Our hero then approaches and coldly asks what the bully is thinking. With his head down and trembling with fear, the chubby boy can only apologize for what he did, but the protagonist doesn't accept the request and lands a powerful punch right in his stomach. The man is left breathless by the blow, and his face contorts as he feels immense pain. Then the hero looks at him and tells him not to end his sentences with the word sorry. On his knees, the man apologizes again and says he did nothing to deserve that. Then the boy grabs him and asks if he is sure he didn't do anything wrong. The chubby boy is scared by the hero's strength and panics, thinking he's going to die. Afraid, he says he will tell everything, and the protagonist asks where his family is. With a creepy smile on his face, our character asks if he is telling the truth. With a furious look, the protagonist asks if the man really thought he would fall for that. The chubby guy goes into total panic and starts screaming in despair at the frightening situation. Out of fear, he tells the hero to go ask them and ends up shouting the name Friday. Our character starts laughing and mockingly asks if he should meet this person alone. Suddenly, a red-haired man appears and says that yes, he can meet this Friday. The scene then shifts back to the snow-covered city, showing that time has passed. We see someone holding a pamphlet from the church of the hero that promises to transform ordinary people. The chubby guy explains that it is a new religion that worships Friday as if he were a god. The boy finds it very strange that leaders call themselves heroes and thinks it's crazy. It is explained that the Hero Church is a special religious group recognized by Friday himself. The man continues his explanation about how things work within that mysterious group. Without patience, the boy grabs the chubby boy and tells him to go straight to the conclusion of the story. The chubby boy screams in pain as the protagonist squeezes him tighter to get the answer. In the end, the boy realizes that he needs to ask Friday himself and steps on the fat guy. He then concludes that this is the only sure way to get the information he needs. Then, the chubby guy explains that the Hero's Church is the only one that can talk to Friday. That's why she is the only one among humans who can communicate directly with this entity. The man then warns that because of this, the Hero's Church is a very different place than normal. With that, the protagonist orders the man to guide him there, but the chubby man refuses right away. At that moment he wonders why he would go to such a crazy place, and we see a very sinister church. Inside the place we see a man with silver hair in front of two giant statues. With a serious look he questions himself about that place that seems like hell to many. Suddenly a little girl appears, all happy, and shows a drawing she made of him. She repeats that she drew it with a smile, while some men behind her look desperate. The men scold the girl for entering without knocking and apologize to the leader, but the hero just pats her head and says with a smile that it's okay. He then says that children's mistakes are the adults' responsibility and is introduced as Jumshu. Returning to the explanation, the chubby guy says that the leaders of the church are called heroes. In this he adds that because they are fanatics who find Friday, there is no other way. Finally, the man says he will give our character some important advice. The man's advice is for the protagonist not to go to the Jamsel branch under any circumstances. Soon we see bodies on the ground as the leader says that everyone there will realize what he wants. The chubby guy ends by saying that they are crazier than Friday himself and want to give him his love. The priests of the Church of Heroism firmly believed one thing, that Friday, humanity had known that their respect was not mere worship. A man named Friday had saved all of humanity from a great evil, and so they revered him as a deity, not just a hero. Many wished to be like him, the only superhuman. With that, those who could not become superhuman decided to become heroes in their own way. Since he was little, Jumshu already showed a different look from other children. Years after that boy, we already had an adult and masculine Jimsu who just dug. Then a man fully dressed in good clothes arrives saying he is not interested in him. With that, our boy reveals that he just wants to know where Friday is. Calling him a bastard, he says that Jumsu is part of a cult. 11, but the blonde-haired man doesn't seem fazed and just gives a smile. He then asks who our young man would be to invade his territory like that. The blonde extra mentions that his followers should be outside. Our boy then points to a bunch of bodies asking if he was referring to those things. Before the extra next to our boy could speak, our boy tells him to shut up. The blonde man then hears our protagonist ordering the Friday guy to be brought in immediately. Our boy continues to hold the extra, while the cult leader looks surprised at the way he spoke. With his body all puffed up and veins popping out, he asks if the hero is our young man's friend, but our protagonist doesn't seem intimidated at all. He then says that this is not the answer he was expecting to hear. At this absurd speed, our boy appears in front of the blonde and prepares a punch. And then he lands a powerful punch while asking if he should call the hero by a worse name, but thinking he would come out on top. Something unusual happened, catching him by surprise. The blonde simply kicked our boy, throwing him up. Our boy flies so far that he disappears from the blonde's vision. Sitting in the middle of the rebel, the extra looks shocked. Giving a mocking smile, he comments that our protagonist is very aggressive. The other extra is amazed at the speed of his boss's reaction, who didn't even flinch. He thinks that even though he is an ex-professional, he was able to keep up with our boy's technique. And then he wonders if there have always been so many monsters like this in their country. The blonde then squeezes the man's face, calling him blasphemous. He keeps complaining that they entered the chapel wearing street shoes. The extra is terrified by his boss's expression, but in the middle of the rebel, our protagonist gets up telling him not to repeat it. All heard, our young man says he doesn't have much time. With a serious look, he orders Friday to be brought at the same time. With that, he steps hard on the ground preparing to attack. Then our boy flies towards the blonde screaming to be now. The cult leader is shocked by the speed of the attack. Like a rocket, our protagonist advances with his fist ready. The force of his thrust was so great that it cracked the entire ground. Outside the church, a huge explosion of energy happens, but something unexpected happens. The blonde asks if he is qualified to scream like that. At that moment, our protagonist turns and tries to surprise the blonde. The cult leader restrains our young man with wires, but says it's still not enough to stop him. These threads tighten tightly. With a smile, he says he won't get rid of his rope easily. He then asks if our young man knows what a blue marlin is, a 900-pound fish. Suddenly, the blonde man's expression changes to surprise. Our boy then begins to strain and shows his back full of old scars. The blonde extra is curious about the marks and comments that he must have a great story, but our furious protagonist tells him to stop messing around. With red eyes and full of rage, he shouts again for them to bring that Friday guy. At this point, the cult leader is shocked to see that his super strong threads are breaking. But instead of being scared, he gives an excited smile and says it was a great catch. Our young man finally breaks free, and the blonde man on the floor admits that he has the right to speak. The cult leader then remembers that our protagonist wanted to see Mr. Friday, and it looks like he's going to help. We see a car driving through the completely destroyed city. Inside the vehicle, we see the two extras, and one of them comments that it has been 5 years since the end of the world. The extra then wonders why our young man is with them in the vehicle. Suddenly, the blonde man asks if our boy's name is Baked Doha. The cult leader then questions if they know what has always existed in human history. With a smile on his face, our boy answers that it is violence. He goes on to explain that humans have always attacked each other, but the leader says this is understandable. Giving a sinister smile, he says that brute force is faster than talk, and accuses our young man of being the same. Our boy then asks what his point is as strange people appear outside the car. At that point, the extras start shouting that a new player has arrived. One of the men outside wonders if the hero has brought a new player to them. Our protagonist doesn't understand who those people are, but the driver tells him they've reached their destination. The blonde man then gets out of the car and says that violence is a divine gift connected with emotions. Even heroes win with brute force, and that our boy was wrong about Friday. Yet he calls our boy Doha and says he has the necessary qualifications. Then, in front of a giant statue, the cult leader invites him to go with him somewhere. The leader invites him to the stage where he can become a hero, revealing it to be the Seoul Stadium. On the second underground level, we see a fighting arena packed with excited people. There in the arena, 2 men risk their lives. The announcer announces the first fighter, the colossal Mac Diamond. Your opponent is an elderly man who looks very weak and asks for respect before the fight begins. The huge difference in physique between the 2 fighters is quite clear. From below, the elderly man faces his giant opponent, who looks like a building in front of him. Without mercy, the big man attacks the elderly man with a powerful stomp. Then we see a flashback showing defenseless and terrified people. Hearing the cries, a muscular man reveals that he is also getting tired of that situation. With tears in his eyes, he asks for a different reaction, because what was natural has become predictable. That man was Friday, and he was already tired of humanity's predictable reactions. Then he comments that people with their reactions are forcing him to be the bad guy, and begins to give him a macabre laugh that makes the man tremble. And then the only option he chose was to act in an unexpected way. His choice was the end of humanity, because he wanted to see something new. With that, humanity fell into despair with only 15 minutes left. Amidst the chaos, an extra shouts that there is nowhere to run because everything is on fire. A long-haired boy then wonders if he's going to die like that. He regrets never having had a girlfriend and having worked like a slave his entire life. The man finds everything very unfair. What is happening? But when he saw the girl crying, he decided to take advantage of the fact that the world was ending. He then grabs her and desperately proposes to her as she screams in fear. Another extra tries to stop him, but the man says it doesn't matter, because they're all going to leave anyway. Then the boy who tried to help is hit hard on the head. Ironically, that behavior spread like a plague among the people. Humanity on the brink of extinction has turned into pandemonium, with everyone attacking each other. The muscular man shouts angrily that this was exactly what he wanted. Seeing all this, Friday watched as if he were watching fireworks. With an excited smile, he wonders why it took them so long to show something fun. He was having fun. With that, Mr. Friday was satisfied with the violence, and the end of humanity was postponed. The leader explains that what has always saved everyone is sheer brutality. So to express his gratitude, he holds this festival every day. Our boy gets angry and asks if all of this is just to amuse this Friday guy. With his eyes red with rage, he concludes that the blonde man is a complete psychopath. But the cult leader smiles and asks if it is really just for his lord's pleasure. In the arena, the giant fighter celebrates on the body. With his arm raised, he prepares to attack again, cursing the old men. At this point, he shouts that his show is just beginning and punches the old man. However, he is interrupted by something unexpected and is left without understanding anything. The elderly man lying on the ground says that the young man aimed in the wrong place because he has no teeth. He goes on to explain that because of this it is as if he were wearing a mouth guard. The big man is amazed to see the old man alive. With his eyes full of hate, he screams that this is the biggest nonsense he has ever heard. In the blink of an eye, the giant fighter has his eyes attacked by the old man. The audience is in shock. The elderly man then attacks the opponent's face with his sharp nails. With that, the elderly man wins the fight and stands over the body of his defeated opponent. 125, then we see her sharp, blood-filled nails. With a smile on his face, he reveals that he hates young people and gives a sinister laugh. The audience remains stunned. People seem terrified by the brutality of the fight, but the crowd changes their mind and begins to celebrate the old man's victory, finding it incredible. While the crowd celebrates, our boy doesn't seem to understand the situation. The cult leader then comments to our protagonist that everyone seems happy with the show. He continues his speech saying that violence has a sacred and special power. People are just now realizing its value, and that our young people will also. Our boy then grabs him by the collar and tells the cult leader to stop talking nonsense. He then looks at him and says he came there just to find this Friday guy. The cult leader then asks if he was speaking indirectly and reveals that he knows about our protagonist's family. He then mentions the names of the family members, and our young man is shocked, wondering how he knows that. With a mocking smile, the blonde asks if he doesn't want to take part in the fight now. The blonde man then says he will repeat what he said before. He then reveals that if our boy becomes a hero, he will be able to see Mr. Friday. With a red aura, he orders our protagonist to participate in the fight and show all his violence. At that moment, a woman appears and asks if Baek Doha is the boy with black hair. She then concludes that our boy must be the fighter she will supervise. With a furious look, our protagonist accepts and says to schedule a fight right now. The blonde finds it funny, but says the festival ends at 10 at night. The woman then says not to worry, as she will prepare everything for tomorrow. Our young man is shocked as she reveals that violence outside the arena is prohibited. The leader explains that violence is sacred and using it wrongly is like blasphemy. Then the blonde man calls a woman named Hana over to them. He apologizes for calling her on his day off, but she says it's okay. Our young man is shocked and confused because the woman looks a lot like someone he knows. With wide eyes, he wonders if it's his Nuna. The girl's resemblance to his sister was so great that it confused him for a moment. Later, we see a city with buildings as the sun sets. Our protagonist looks tired and out of breath after a long day. He then begins to exercise to prepare himself for the fights that lie ahead. While exercising, he looks at a picture of his family. With a determined look, our boy seems to have found a new reason to fight. Suddenly, the woman appears and praises him for his dedication. The woman sitting on the bed comments that they are alone, but our protagonist is just exercising. With a serious look, our young man asks what she means by that. She explains that caring for and analyzing the players is her responsibility. The girl then approaches and says that she was also curious about something. She then looks at him and asks if she can touch his body. The woman smiles suggestively and tells him to forget it. She then tells them to go to the arena because it's time. Arriving at the branch of the hero church, we see a large statue. Our boy and woman walk through a crowd of people. Our protagonist is impressed by the amount of people there. The woman then says that there are about 10,000 people gathered. Our young man is shocked by the number of spectators for a fight. She explains that it's natural because watching fights is fun. The entire crowd seems excited to see the spectacle of violence. People tired of surviving wanted to escape reality, and the arena was the answer. She concludes that the church gave them the joy of violence, and that this makes them heroes. He then thinks that it is a strange situation to see so many people together. The woman then says that everyone there just needs to follow the rule. At this point, a girl with purple hair greets the supervisor, who says that violence is prohibited outside the ring. With that, the supervisor tells the woman to schedule the fight for our young man as quickly as possible. Our protagonist then reflects that violence makes someone miserable, but can make someone else happy. Our young man asks if he has to sacrifice himself, and the supervisor answers yes, because it makes him valuable. She then adds that sacrifice is a hero's virtue, and that is why not everyone can be won. The purple-haired woman interrupts them and tells our young man to go to Arena 2. The supervisor then says that to become a hero, it is not enough to win, and that he needs to reach a certain standard. She looks at him and asks him that he needs to win overwhelmingly. In the hallway to the ring, our boy is introduced for his first fight. The announcer announces him as a rookie with no experience and unknown skills who is making his debut. In this, his name Black Doha is announced along with his height and kilos. His opponent is a former professional wrestler named McGorager. The announcer says there is no need to introduce him as soon as the fight begins, and our boy has already acted by applying a blow to the opponent. With the man immobilized, our boy throws him to the ground. Without wasting time with the enemy on the ground, he punches him in the face. With a calm expression, our boy faces the man who did not give up. The man takes advantage and applies a key to our boy while giving a bizarre laugh. The professional fighter taunts our young man by saying that he will cripple his arm and that he was born with great resistance. Our boy doesn't seem to understand what's going on and is confused by the situation. But with absurd strength, our protagonist lifts his opponent off the ground, even though he is still trapped in an arm lock. With a determined look, he prepares to turn the tables on his opponent. Then he slams the man's head hard into the ground, completely reversing the situation. The professional fighter is left stunned on the ground without understanding what just happened. The opponent is shocked to see our young man standing and staring at him intimidatingly. Without giving him time to breathe, our protagonist attacks him again with a devastating blow. The crowd goes wild with the brutality of the fight and begins to applaud enthusiastically. The crowd screams that this is a real fight and that the newcomer is very good. The announcer comments that McGorager didn't even stand a chance against the rookie, who easily defeated him. All hurt, the man gives up and desperately asks our boy to stop hitting him. The judge then raises our young man's arm and announces that McGorager has been defeated. With his face bloodied, our protagonist wipes his mouth with a cold and calculating expression. And all this was done just so that he could one day find the man from that statue, the one called Friday. The supervisor approaches and comments on the great atmosphere of the arena, asking if it is his first time there. Then a muscular man appears and says he loves the place because he doesn't have to hold back, and his record is 15 fights. With a macabre smile and red eyes, he reveals himself to be a criminal and says he is the protagonist there. But our young man doesn't waste time and hits him with a powerful blow to the chest. The opponent flies into the wall, which cracks with the force of the impact, leaving him stunned. With that, the entire audience is silent and in complete shock at the scene. Our protagonist then says he wants it right now. He then orders his next opponent to be brought in. While stepping on the body of the defeated fighter, the crowd changes their mind and starts shouting that he is real and that they will cheer for him. Then a new opponent with a green mohawk appears in the arena, preparing to fight our young man. The man with the mohawk then charges forward as the crowd chants for him to crush the rookie, but before he could attack, our protagonist appears in front of him and touches his face with his hand. He then lands a devastating punch that sinks into his opponent's chest. With a cold look and without being shaken, he just says to bring the next fighter. As the opponent's body falls to the ground, he repeats that he wants the next opponent now. Our boy continues to stand on his opponent's body and asks for the next opponent without rest. And then another opponent is quickly defeated as he keeps asking for one more. But after so many fights in a row, our young man starts coughing and looks a little tired. Even while coughing, he lifts his fallen opponent to the ground to show that he has won once again. And the scene repeats itself once more with another body on the floor as he asks for the next one. With a determined look, he thinks about his family and says he will arrive soon, asking them to stay alive. From above, the two supervisors observe the entire crowd that is going crazy with the spectacle. The purple-haired woman comments that he debuted today and has already achieved 8 consecutive victories. The supervisor then notices that Junsu didn't come to see, which for her means it's still not enough. So she decides it's time to send in the fighter they've prepared especially for our young man. At this point, the announcer announces that the main event of the day is finally about to begin. Then the announcer asks the excited crowd if anyone will be able to stop the monster rookie. But our protagonist looks confused as he hears the announcer announce the popular star of Jamsil. And to everyone's surprise, the big opponent is a child named Simjahoon who enters the arena. Our young man doesn't believe it and wonders if it's serious that he needs to fight that child now. At this point, the entire crowd screams for the new monster to be destroyed. One of the spectators in the audience shouts with a bizarre smile for them to finish off the little boy. With that, our young man feels the murderous intent and realizes how absurd that place really is. He can't understand the crowd's reaction, wondering why they are cheering so wildly. The young man questions if this small child could have done something wrong to deserve this. He then considers the possibility that the boy might actually be a skilled fighter. Suddenly, the child steps forward and throws a small punch against his leg. The little boy continues his weak attacks, unfazed by the huge size difference between them. A disturbing thought begins to form in the hero's mind as he watches the scene unfold. He realizes the crowd's violent chants might be just for their own sick entertainment. This entire brutal spectacle is held in honor of the one they call God Friday. All around the arena, the spectators stomp their feet, eager for the show to begin. Their faces are twisted with excitement as they chant for violence. A unified shout echoes through the stadium, demanding the child's destruction. The small boy just stands there, preparing himself for the inevitable pain to come. With a heavy heart, the hero raises his hand, feeling he has no other choice. A moment later, the child is lying on the ground, defeated and covered in dust. The young man turns his back and walks away, leaving his small opponent on the floor. But the crowd is not satisfied, as one man asks if the fight is already over. He then erupts in anger, clearly disappointed by the lack of brutality. The rest of the audience joins in, demanding he beat the child more, just like before. The hero ignores them and turns to the referee, stating the boy can no longer fight. He then shakes his head in disgust and immediately asks for the next opponent. The referee coldly states that he decides when the match stops and orders them to continue. The hero insists that the match is impossible, pointing to the child who can barely stand. But to everyone's surprise, the small boy struggles back to his feet, determined to fight. The young man looks on, confused as to why his opponent is pushing himself so far. His attention is then drawn to a man in the crowd who is cheering frantically for the child. The man yells that if his son lasts 5 more minutes, he will get canned ham as a reward. This revelation shocks the hero, triggering a painful memory from his own past. A flashback begins, showing his own father holding him while making a chilling statement. He remembers the man's words echoing in his mind, declaring that a father's word is law. In the memory, his younger self timidly asks if his father had called his mother. His father's expression was cold as he explained that he had realized something important. He then accused his son of trying to run away, just like his mother had. The man claimed this was all because the boy thought of him as trash. He then reached out, promising that a beating would make him come to his senses. The memory is filled with the sound of a raging storm outside his childhood home. Thrown out in the rain, he overheard his mother on the phone, threatening to harm him if he called again. She cursed him for being born and warned him never to try coming home. The brutal lesson was seared into his memory. A father's word was absolute. Returning to the present, he sees that same desperate obedience in the child's eyes. The child's father continues to shout from the stands, urging his son to hold on. A voice in his head, his father's, urges him to beat the child mercilessly since he has a goal to achieve. He then sees a vision of his siblings, their eyes glowing red as they ask him to come home soon. His sister's image appears beside him, telling him how much she misses him, adding to his inner turmoil. From the stands, the supervisor's voice reminds him that to become a hero, he must meet Junsu's standards. Hearing this, the young man's body tenses up as he stands in the center of the arena. With a fire in his eyes, he steels his resolve, ready to do what is necessary. The ground is now stained with blood as he stands over the defeated child, holding him by the wrist. This act of brutality sends the crowd into a frenzy, and they cheer wildly for the monster rookie. He listens as they chant his name, his expression remaining cold and distant. But the fight isn't over, as the small boy suddenly bites down hard on his opponent's arm. The hero looks down at him, his own eyes glowing red, as he tells the child to take it easy. From their viewing box, the two supervisors watch the chaotic scene unfold below. The blonde cult leader tries to hold back a laugh, clearly amused by the spectacle. He finds the sight of an adult beating a child to be entertaining. The supervisor beside him comments that, as expected, the rookie does not disappoint. The elf-eared woman remains silent, her face a mask of neutrality as she observes the fight. Her eyes stay fixed on the arena, carefully analyzing every move he makes. Meanwhile, the child's father shouts from the stands that he is different from the others. His face is filled with a desperate conviction, believing in his son's purpose. The hero raises his hand, his thoughts clear as he vows to protect his family at any cost. He grits his teeth, his mind replaying his father's words as he reaffirms his own purpose is different. A bell rings, and he raises the defeated child's arm in the air, signaling the end of the match. The announcer's voice echoes through the arena, declaring it is time for honor and thanks. Throughout the stands, the entire crowd bows their heads in prayer, their devotion on full display. The large screens flash with Friday's face as the audience chants their love for him in unison. Even the battered child on the ground whispers his thanks to Friday, joining the collective worship. The hero pants from exhaustion, sickened by the fanaticism surrounding him. Later that night, the city is silent beneath a vast, star-filled sky. Inside one of the buildings, steam rises from a running shower head. The young man stands under the hot water, the scars on his back telling stories of past battles. As the water washes away the blood and grime, his thoughts drift back to a distant memory. He recalls a peaceful, sunlit home surrounded by lush green trees. In the memory, his sister happily presents an instant camera she has just found. He looks at her surprised, as she explains that it was tucked away in a drawer. She then calls for all the children in the family to gather together for a photograph. With a click, the camera captures the happy moment on a bright summer day. A hand holds the freshly developed photo, but the surface is completely white. The family looks at the blank picture, and one of the kids asks if the camera is broken. His sister tells them to look carefully, as she gently shakes the photo back and forth. The children watch in awe as the image slowly appears, one asking if his sister is a magician. She calls him over, laughing about how funny his face looks in the picture. He looks at her, a hint of a smile on his face as he asks if it came out well. She proudly holds up the photo, declaring it to be their very first family picture. Back in the present, he stares at the worn photograph, the memory a bittersweet reminder. His expression is somber as he sits alone in the dimly lit room, lost in thought. A woman enters the room, and he looks up as she approaches him. She holds out a can of beer, offering it to him without a word. The girl then teases him, saying it would be boring if he didn't drink. He accepts the can, thanking her politely before opening it. He then calls her by name and asks when he will finally be able to become a hero. She takes a sip of her own beer and tells him that his match today didn't seem bad. The woman adds that he fought well and just needs to keep showing matches like that. He looks at her, his eyes questioning as she mentions the main event with the child. She admits she is relieved he seems okay, as many other fighters quit due to guilt. He tells her not to worry about him, his resolve unshaken by the day's events. He then offers to participate in an even more intense match if she wants. A dark glint appears in his eyes as he states he'll do anything to see his family again. The woman takes another sip of her beer, her expression unreadable as she listens. She then offers to tell him an interesting story, though she isn't sure it will help. The girl reclines on the couch, preparing to reveal why Friday has left humanity alone for so long. Her story begins with a view of the Earth, a planet about to face an unprecedented threat. She explains that a powerful being, known as Player Friday, was facing a crucial moment. He stood before a ball, the ground cracking under the sheer pressure of his presence. The white-haired figure then took a deep breath, preparing to unleash a devastating kick. With immense force, his foot connected with the ball, sending it hurtling forward. The object transformed into a beam of pure energy, streaking across a futuristic city. A massive explosion erupted on impact, engulfing the entire metropolis in a ball of fire. Amidst the inferno he created, the man raised his hand in a triumphant gesture. He then let out a powerful shout, celebrating the spectacle of destruction before him. The figure stood alone, watching the mushroom cloud rise, as if it were a beautiful firework. But after his display of power, he simply collapsed onto the ground, seemingly unimpressed. 8 days passed, and Friday remained in the ruins, feeling sulky and bored. Humanity's predictable reactions had made him lose interest, and he needed a new stimulus. That new stimulus came from news reports of protests spreading across the globe. He watched as citizens expressed their dissatisfaction with the World Alliance's response. Meanwhile, the nations of the world mobilized their forces, filling the sky with helicopters. They all converged on a single skyscraper, the temporary World Alliance headquarters. Inside, leaders from 228 different countries gathered for an emergency summit. However, massive crowds of protesters surrounded the building, demanding the alliance be disbanded. A news reporter explains the protests are intensifying over the incompetent response. The crowd continues to chant in unison, their anger directed at the World Alliance. Two world leaders watch the scene unfold, wondering how they can possibly appease the angry mob. As the Russian president steps forward, he is immediately swarmed by the media. A reporter pushes through the crowd, asking the leader for his thoughts on the current situation. He then presses the man for an official statement on his position regarding the crisis. The president looks down on them with disdain, thinking to himself how foolish they all are. His two aides stand behind him, their expressions tense as they watch the confrontation. The reporter is momentarily stunned into silence by the president's cold, dismissive glare. This only enrages the crowd further, and they begin shouting for the incompetent leader to be judged. In a sudden move, the president grabs a soldier's rifle and fires a single shot into the air. He then calmly tells everyone to be quiet, shocking the soldier and the reporter beside him. A wave of confusion and fear washes over the protesters, and the entire area falls silent. The leader explains there is no time for protests, as Friday could appear at any moment. He scolds them, asking if they can think of a more ignorant way to die than this. He then reveals that if Friday does come to kill them, it will be the perfect opportunity. The World Alliance will not miss this golden chance to strike back at their common enemy. He declares their plan is to direct every weapon system on the planet to this exact location. The crowd looks up in horror as he vows to turn the entire area into a wasteland to defeat Friday. One protester stammers that it must be a lie, but the president confirms all high officials are present. He explains they could have met in a secure bunker, but chose to be here as voluntary bait. He then urges the crowd to value their lives, promising the alliance will never abandon them. The protesters stand in stunned silence, their anger replaced by a mix of fear and uncertainty. One man quietly decides he should go see his parents, his protest forgotten. Others in the crowd murmur in agreement, and a wave of people begins to leave the area. One of the leaders watches as the protesters disperse, a smug look on his face. The Russian president notes that it only took 1 minute to calm the boiling masses. He knew exactly what to say to quell the uprising and regain control. Later, inside the skyscraper, the World Alliance meeting is finally underway. With the UN logo displayed prominently, the atmosphere is tense and formal. The leaders of the world are gathered, their faces grim as they prepare for the discussion. One representative reports that 3 countries did not attend, and Korea is running late. He then suggests they begin discussing countermeasures against Friday without further delay. But as another official is about to present his report, he is abruptly cut off. The Russian president interrupts, stating they must first elect a leader for the alliance. This suggestion is met with surprise and confusion from the other representatives. The president argues that time is of the essence, and they need someone to make quick decisions. The other leaders quickly agree, raising their hands in a show of unanimous support. As they are about to start selecting candidates, another official speaks up. The Russian president cuts in, declaring that the leader has already been decided. His statement is met with shocked and disapproving looks from the other world leaders. Another leader tries to calm him down, insisting they need a fairly elected leader. The Russian president explains his homeland has been surrounded by enemies for centuries. Because of this, they hid their strategic assets and minimized damage from Friday's attack. He declares that the success of this meeting depends entirely on Russia's participation. Pointing directly at the other leaders, he states that there is a price for their cooperation. The Japanese prime minister is outraged, accusing him of trying to cause division. The Russian leader calmly asks if Japan can handle the fallout after the Friday incident ends. With a cold look, he clarifies that he is not asking for their permission. He is notifying them, leaving no room for argument, as the prime minister sweats under pressure. The U.S. representative then speaks up, demanding a sincere apology for his statement. The Russian leader scoffs, calling him shameless for not being able to protect his own president. He reminds him that his country broadcasted their president's death lived to the entire world. The other leaders look down in shame as he asks if he is wrong about their responsibility. A moment passes as a shooting star streaks across the night sky, a sign of the changing times. The results of the vote are displayed, showing an overwhelming majority in favor of the Russian president. He takes his place at the head of the table, promising their choice will not be wrong. Another leader interrupts the meeting to announce that his homeland is conducting an experiment. As others question this, an aide hands the newly elected chairman a radio. The chairman takes the radio, noting that the call has come at the right time. He asks the commander on the other end if preparations for the experiment are complete. The commander reports that they have gathered the civilians in the forest, as instructed, with a cold, unwavering gaze. He gives a single, chilling order to begin the operation. A soldier gives a thumbs up, signaling that the missiles are armed and ready for launch. The commander flips open the cover of the launch device, his hand ready to activate it. With a roar of fire and smoke, the massive missiles begin to lift off from their platforms. A gloved finger presses down on the large red button, sealing the fate of the target area. A single missile soars through the sky, a harbinger of the destruction to come. The bait, a humanoid figure designed to attract the target, stands waiting in the forest. Unaware of their purpose, one of the civilians wonders aloud why they were gathered there. A small child, oblivious to the danger, points excitedly at the streak of light in the sky. The missile begins its descent, glowing red, hot as it plummets towards the earth. A flock of crows with glowing red eyes fills the sky, sensing the imminent doom. The birds swarm as the descending missile becomes a blinding, sun-like orb. A massive explosion erupts, engulfing the entire forest in a searing white light. From a safe distance, a soldier watches the mushroom cloud rise into the sky. Another soldier observes the aftermath, the reflection of the inferno visible in his goggles. A monitor shows that their target, Friday, was caught directly in the blast. But amidst the flames, Friday sits unharmed, mockingly cheering that the World Alliance is the best. The commander reports over the radio that Friday has appeared, confirming the bait was successful. Back at the summit, the chairman calls this very good news, as another leader questions the experiment. Another leader tries to argue, saying they must prepare countermeasures and respond appropriately. The chairman explains that Russia has a grave responsibility in this matter. He reveals they discovered they could lure Friday by sacrificing 1 million people. The other leaders are horrified, unable to comprehend the scale of such a sacrifice. He then claims this is not just Russia's achievement, but the first of the World Alliance. A smug smile spreads across his face as the other leaders are left speechless. No one could refute his words, as they were all secretly relieved by the news. The crushing pressure of responsibility and the fear of Friday had been lifted from their shoulders. They had needed a scapegoat, someone to take the fall for the difficult decisions to come. A woman huddles on the cold ground, a victim of the very leaders meant to protect her. The Alliance had found the person. They needed to take responsibility for their actions. A lone helicopter flies through the night sky, its destination unknown. Inside, a soldier reports to his commander that the Russian president sacrificed 1 million citizens. The commander, his face scarred and wary, asks if Friday appeared as a result. The soldier confirms that he did, and the helicopter continues on its silent journey. The commander simply states that the man is competent, and the soldier hesitantly agrees. The South Korean representative, Choi Bahung, tells him not to overthink it. The scene continues with a lone helicopter flying under the moonlight. Inside, a soldier reports that the Russian president sacrificed 1 million citizens, and he questions whether this is right. Then the commander asks if the monster called Friday appeared, and the pilot confirms that it did. In a cold voice, the commander simply says that the Russian president is competent, and this leaves the soldier confused. This is Baeung Choi, the representative from Korea, and he tells the pilot not to think too much about it. He then continues talking about the current situation in a very calm manner. But suddenly the representative starts to sweat coldly, saying he really needs to use the bathroom. The pilot warns that they are still in the middle of the South Sea, and the guy despairs. Baeung then suggests that he can solve the problem if the pilot looks to the side. But the pilot tells him to hold on a little longer. With this, the soldier thinks that the regional commander is a simple-minded person and becomes embarrassed. He even thinks the representative is a fool and thinks it's a shame that this guy represents his country. The scene then shifts to Seoul, South Korea, where chaos is about to break out. On the news, a politician declares a state of national emergency for the entire country. The news reports that President Logan was defeated by Friday and asks citizens to trust the government. But panic has already set in on the streets, with people fighting for supplies and food. At that moment, a loud noise echoes through the city, indicating that something bad has happened. We see a big traffic jam with a truck surrounded by several cars. A man shouts into the phone saying there is no room and tells people to leave quietly. Then the truck driver argues with him, while a little girl runs across the street to her house. The child stops, scared, in the middle of the street, while a hand reaches out to save him. At the last second, our hero jumps in to push the little girl out of danger. Roland manages to save the child, but ends up falling to the ground due to the impact of the movement. Sitting on the asphalt with the girl in his arms, our protagonist wonders if the truck driver has gone crazy. The girl looks at our hero, completely scared by everything that happened. Soon after, the little girl's eyes fill with tears because of the great fright. The child then begins to cry loudly as Roland tries to calm him down. Our boy is desperate, not knowing what to do since society has become chaos after the Friday incident. Suddenly, a shot rings out, and a man in the background falls to the ground lifeless. The chaos was a series of unpredictable terrors, and the situation was only getting worse by the second. And to complicate matters, North Korean soldiers begin to parachute into the country. A disaster alert appears on cell phones, warning that North Korea has invaded the South. The Friday incident was the perfect excuse the neighboring country needed to attack. With the world's attention on the monster, North Korea began its invasion without any problems. This situation caused enormous internal conflict among Southern politicians. During a meeting, one of them suggests abandoning an area to protect Seoul, but the other immediately disagrees. They start arguing badly, accusing each other of protecting only their own interests. The fight gets so intense that they almost attack until a voice interrupts. Commander Choi Byung appears, saying that everything points to a single solution. So the Army Special Warfare Commander says he has a very simple method. The politicians stop fighting and look at him confused, asking what method this would be. Amidst all the chaos, a light of hope shines for South Korea. Back at the meeting, Commander Choi arrives carrying a bloody bag and announces his presence. One of the politicians is horrified, and the soldier apologizes for the delay, saying that the load was heavy. In shock, the politician stutters in disbelief when Bae-hung throws the bag on the ground. The North Korean emblem on the bag makes it clear what happened, and Choi says they know the cause of the problem. With a sinister smile and covered in blood, he asks if his solution is not good. A politician then shouts in despair, asking who gave that guy the authority to do that. At this, another man announces that the People's Army has expressed its intention to surrender, and this means unification. Everyone quickly changes sides and suggests that Major Choi receive a large reward for his deed, and so the government recognized Choi Bae-hung's merits and sent him as a representative of South Korea. But that was just the official version because they actually needed someone to blame. Then Choi arrives at the World Summit apologizing for being late with an imposing posture. He sits down and introduces himself as the official representative of South Korea. But one of the leaders complains about sending a mere soldier instead of a general. Another representative agrees and questions whether South Korea has no pride at all. Then he orders the commander to leave the conference room immediately, but Choi just smiles. The soldier asks the interpreter not to translate what he is going to say. Bae-hung then says that there is a universal language and shows the middle finger to everyone. The leaders are furious with the Korean's actions and ask if he has gone mad. They scream that they need to teach the soldier a lesson and put Korea on the sanctioned countries list. Choi explains that he was tired of following orders and was happy when he was asked to be a representative. But he accuses other leaders of only wanting power, even in the midst of a crisis. A Taiwanese representative becomes angry and says that the military cannot handle the responsibility. The Korean then calls everyone idiots and says he came because it's a responsible position. With that, he stands up and says that if they want respect, they need to show respect first. Another guy tells the soldier to have a little sense and asks if he thinks that all representatives are the same. This Chinese leader tells him to look carefully because all the countries with nuclear weapons are there. He threatens that wiping Korea off the map would be a piece of cake for them. Then the Chinese man comments that he heard that if they sacrifice 1 million people, the Monster Friday will appear. Choi then gives a crazy smile and asks if they should use this new weapon too. The other representatives are shocked, not understanding the commander's provocation. The meeting, which had a clear objective, began to lose its way with all this nonsense. The tension in the room is so great that a bottle of water even falls to the floor. One of the leaders shouts for Korea to be expelled from the conference, and Choi asks if he is the criminal. But suddenly the Russian president, who is the boss of the meeting, orders everyone to stop. He ends the session because of travel fatigue and schedules the continuation for the next day. One of the guys tries to complain about the organization's dignity and lack of discipline. With his eyes glowing red, the Russian repeats that the meeting is over and that's it. The politician who complained at the time turns white with fear and starts to sweat. Then the Russian president looks at Choi and tells him to come back tomorrow as a representative of Korea as well. With a confident smile, Commander Choi agrees to return the next day for the meeting. The scene then takes us to a building during a starry night. Lying in bed, our protagonist Roland thinks the meeting is too exaggerated and that Choi doesn't seem normal. But he soon asks the girl next to him why she is there, and she replies that there is only one bed. Our hero then gets up and says he's going to sleep on the floor to make her more comfortable. Then the girl holds our boy's shirt, preventing him from getting out of bed. Surprised by her attitude, Roland turns to see what she wants. The girl then asks our protagonist to listen to her story until the end. The story then shifts again to a big city all lit up at night. In a very tall building, an older man observes the cityscape through the window. His face shows that he was waiting for something or someone with great anticipation. His eyes are focused, and he seems quite determined about what is about to happen. In a firm voice, the man says he was waiting for this moment to arrive. Suddenly a tall, mysterious figure appears behind him, and the older man stares at him. The mysterious being comments that the man's reaction is as if he was already expecting his visit and finds it fascinating. He then reveals with an evil smile that everything is happening according to his plan. The villain says that the remaining human population on the planet is only 2.5 billion people. The sinister figure says that he already knows what the man likes and has several ways to please him. At this, the older man extends his hand to the being and says that they can be good partners. The scene cuts to the entrance of a men's and women's restroom. Back at the World Summit, we see two representatives talking in the bathroom after the tense meeting. The Chinese leader complains about the atmosphere in the conference room because of that Korean soldier, and his colleague agrees. He then agrees to teach Choi a lesson when the crisis is over, but first they need to save humanity. At that point, the captain comes out of a cabin saying that it was a close call because he heard the entire conversation between the two. The soldier says that his stomach hurts from so much tension and looks at the politicians with a serious look. Choi then asks the Chinese man directly what his method is for eliminating the monster Friday. The commander waits for an answer, but the politician remains silent, completely speechless. With that, the Korean makes fun of him, asking if the guy can't speak English without an interpreter nearby. Then Choi reveals that his method to defeat the monster is intimate relations, and the Chinese man is confused. He explains that if the monster does not have these basic desires, then it can only be an alien. The other politician tells the military man to stop with the nonsense, but Choi doesn't even pay attention to what he says. The Chinese representative says that they need any information to create possible plans against the creature. He says that thinking rationally will not work against an enemy that has no organization or motive. With a teasing smile, Choi suggests that perhaps the monster likes old men, like the representative. The Chinese politician becomes extremely irritated by the commander's joke and loses his temper completely. He calls Choi crazy and says that without this crisis, the military would be just another nobody. The guy shouts loudly that his patience has a limit and that he will no longer tolerate provocations. Choi then asks if he said that to hurt him and says that most people in the world live like that. Then the soldier grabs the politician by the collar of his shirt and lifts him into the air without any effort. Holding the man, the commander warns him that he always gives back what he receives in the same coin. With that, the commander slaps the Chinese politician in the face with both hands. The crack echoes through the bathroom, and the representative puts his hand to his sore cheek, while the other guy looks on in shock. The soldier then turns around, and with a bored look on his face asks what kind of situation this is. Desperate, the Chinese politician begins to shout loudly, calling for the local security guards. Then when a huge security guard appears, he points at Choi and accuses him of assaulting a head of nation. The other politician confirms the story and says he saw the soldier attacking the Chinese man for no reason. The security guard, who is a brute with red eyes, orders the commander to go with him for a moment, but Choi doesn't even move, and with a smile on his face asks what will happen if he refuses the order. The big guy then warns that if the soldier doesn't cooperate, he could end up getting hurt in the process. At this point, the security guard reveals that he is also the representative of his country, and that he is already bored with everything. He starts a flashback saying that, in the beginning, getting stronger was everything to him. The guy says he won one fight after another, and after winning continuously for a long time. At some point, the results of the battles began to become predictable and emotionless. He came to the conclusion that ultimately being strong means living in boredom. Suddenly, the security guard is punched so hard in the face that he flies away and falls to the ground. Choi then steps on the defeated guy's head and asks what his problem is. The commander then asks the fallen man if he doesn't feel wronged by the situation. He says that the security guard only followed orders, so he shouldn't have more responsibility than the others. The soldier explains that superiors give vague orders, and the burden of blame changes with a single word. And even if it's unfair, their job is to take responsibility and he'll leave. But before leaving, Choi warns that he always pays what he receives and asks the guy not to hold a grudge. Then he threatens the security guard with excruciating pain in his eyes if he doesn't keep quiet. The word sound makes the security guard remember something he had forgotten. He remembers a time when he was completely broken psychologically. The guy remembers the loud noise he heard during a mission with several drones flying, and from that day on the brute developed a great fear of loud noises. Choi then asks if he has ever heard the sound of someone who is between life and death. Then the commander starts shouting loudly in the security guard's face to scare him. The trauma is so great that the security guard faints from fear and falls to the bathroom floor. With that, the soldier starts laughing a lot and can't believe that his crazy plan worked. Looking at the Chinese man, he says that despite appearances, the politician is pure of heart. The representative then thinks that guy is the craziest person he has ever seen in his life. The commander continues to laugh at the whole situation with a satisfied look on his face. In the elevator, Choi accepts the Chinese man's apology and says he is a simple person. The elevator continues to rise as they head to their hotel rooms. With his arm on the politician's shoulder, Choi tells them to get along better the next day. But suddenly the soldier's expression changes and he seems to have noticed something strange. The elevator door opens and they find the Russian president defeated on the floor. The politicians are shocked and Choi recognizes the man is the chairman of the World Summit. The scene then changes to the corridor ahead, where we see someone walking down a dark, sinister corridor. Then the villain appears with a look of pure rage, saying he is very angry. Back in the elevator, Commander Choi recognizes the threat and realizes it is Friday. As a result, the politicians who were previously cursing the military are now scared shitless and asking him to protect them. But the commander remains silent and thinks to himself how the hell he is going to defeat a monster of that level. The scene cuts to the hallway up ahead, where we spot someone strolling down a dark and super creepy corridor. Then the villain shows up with a look of pure rage, basically announcing that he is super ticked off right now. Back in the elevator, Commander Choi recognizes the threat and realizes it's Friday. Just like that, the politicians who were trash talking the soldier a second ago are now totally freaked out, begging him for protection. But the commander stays silent, thinking to himself, how in the heck is he supposed to beat a monster on that level? Without a second thought, he grabs a grenade that was hidden in his gear. The Chinese politician looks shocked, wondering what on earth the soldier is doing with that thing. Choi says he doesn't want everyone to punch their ticket right there, and this choice might be the only one they've got. With an insane grin, he shows that he's already pulled the pin and is holding the spoon with his finger. Then he drops the grenade on the elevator floor, and the whole thing starts falling fast. A massive explosion hits, and the panel shows the 19th floor. The structure starts plummeting at high speed, passing the 16th floor in flames. The elevator keeps dropping, hitting the 11th floor with no signs of slowing down. We see the city at night, and a trail of light, showing the elevator falling from the building. The scene cuts back to the story the girl was telling, where the man says they could be good partners. The mysterious being gives a slight smile, while observing that man's determination. The older man extends his hand with a serious, confident look. The villain then says the man looks nervous, and reveals that everything was set up just for him. He goes on to say that from the World Alliance meeting, all the way to the missile test, the evil entity finishes by saying he can show him all the different types of game overs that he enjoys so much. The man then reveals that he is the president of the World Union, which is why he's the boss in charge. But suddenly, a trickle of red liquid runs down from his mouth, showing that something bad just went down. The villain looks impressed and questions if all that was just a plan made specifically for him. With his head being held by the villain, the president starts leaking red fluid from his eyes. Friday then looks at him with total disdain and asks why an ant is pretending to be a human. The scene shifts to space where we see planet Earth, home to countless forms of life. And among all these lives, the narrator highlights that ants live here too. She explains that ants are one of the most successful groups among animal families. But even with all that success, there is a huge threat to these little guys. The girl then reveals that this major threat to the ants is human beings. At that moment, a curious kid places a large rock right on top of the anthill. With their home blocked by the rock, the ants started having all sorts of different reactions. Some of them started running back and forth, completely confused by the situation. Others tried to figure out a way to remove the massive rock blocking the path. And a few brave ones decided to attack the human, who caused the whole mess directly. The narrator says that for the kid, it was just fun, but for the ants, it was a matter of survival. Suddenly, one specific ant started attacking the others in its own colony. Then it placed the bodies of the other ants in front of the kid as an offering. The boy thought that situation was super interesting and actually pretty entertaining to watch. But the problem was what happened next, with the kids saying they could be good partners. The girl explains that the boy got angry and asked himself how an ant dares to propose a partnership. The scene goes back to Friday with dirty shoes, telling the ants to listen up. With a stained face, he says he needs to simply be the cause of the chaos that is to come. The story then ends, and we see a huge building all lit up during the night. From above, we see Choi and the two politicians running while one of them comments on how lucky they were. The Chinese politician then questions if there's any point in running since they feel like fish trapped in a net. With that, he says that with that bag, everyone can survive, and Choi wonders what bag he's talking about. The man explains it's a cutting-edge weapon to save humanity, and that the chief of staff has it. At that moment, Choi asks why he took the president's head, saying it could cause misunderstandings. The politician explains that this will show he was the closest person to Lyschenko, and with that, he reveals his plan to become the new president of the World Alliance. The man then asks who would think that just by seeing the head, and Choi says it depends on who did the deed. The soldier says that if he explains, everyone will be convinced, and they arrive at an elevator. The politician calls for the chief of staff, who responds a bit hesitantly upon seeing him. Without delay, the man orders the chief of staff to hand over the bag immediately. He lifts the briefcase and asks for everyone's attention to make an important announcement. Then the politician declares himself the new president, while a woman wonders what's up with that head. Another person is in shock, and the politician tries to explain, but a security guard calls him president. Suddenly, a hand grabs the briefcase handle with force, and red liquid starts splashing. We see the politician's red eye, and now he looks a little spooked. The security guard points his weapon and yells furiously, asking how they dare hurt the president of his homeland. Ignoring the calls for calm, the man shoots without hesitation, starting an instant execution, but the security guard gets hit in the head, while another man tries to help him evacuate the area. With that, the guard falls lifeless to the floor in a pool of crimson fluid. Another man then starts shooting while screaming, calling the shooter trash. Suddenly, several men in suits are hit by red projectiles in a surprise attack. Amidst screams to stop the culprit, a bloody hand hits the floor while others call for calm. The narrator explains that human emotions become simpler and more extreme in groups, and the moment they start to fall, they follow an uncontrollable path. They end up forgetting the essence of the problem, while entering total collapse. The scene repeats like dominoes, falling one after another. A woman curls up on the floor covering her ears, terrified by all the noise. Then Commander Choi crouches in front of her to protect her from the chaos. With a slight smirk, he seems calm and even a little satisfied with the situation. The woman cries and asks for help, but the soldier just asks her to keep it down. He explains that hyped up people will shoot at anything that makes a noise. We see an ant walking on the face of one of the people fallen on the floor. The scene shows the result of the chaos, with a man kneeling amidst several bodies. The politician complains about pain in his arm and wonders why no one listened to him until the end. Choi then stares at him and says people only care about the final results of everything. The politician says they can relax because he secured the bag, and in his eye, we see Choi's reflection. The man praises the commander kneeling on the floor, and Choi asks if that is the weapon to save humanity. The soldier confirms it is while holding the briefcase, with a serious expression on his face. But the commander seems confused and doesn't quite get the situation. Upon opening the briefcase, he sees a red nuclear button and wonders if this is for real. The politician explains that the location is already set, and he just needs to press the launch button. Choi says nuclear weapons don't work on the villain, and that he thought it was a new type of weaponry. The politician then reveals that Choi knows sacrificing 1 million people attracts Friday's attention. With an insane smile, he says they need to survive to give hope to the people. The commander just turns his face in silence with a serious and thoughtful expression. The man asks why he is hesitating and tells him not to look at the number but at the percentage. He says 1 million is just 0.004% of the population, and the soldier questions the decision. The politician responds coldly that since they are his people, he made the decision for them. He then claims that is the ideal location to carry out the sacrifice plan. With a look of pure fury, he screams and orders the commander to press the freaking button already. The soldier says they have no time, and the politician must do it right now. Suddenly, the politician's hand is crushed with brutal force while he tries to press the button. With a shocked face, Choi asks why it's not working and if the button broke. He continues to wonder why the device isn't activating at all. The politician looks to the side with eyes wide open in pure fear. With a reptilian eye, Friday calls him a crazy bastard, showing his true form. The politician is confused, and the soldier says that originally he was skilled at being annoying. Choi then transforms into an imposing, muscular figure with a golden mask. The commander asks if all that was also just a show put on for him. With eyes glowing in flames, Friday says he won't be fooled by a simple ant. The light in his eyes gets even more intense, showing all his power and rage. The politician realizes he's screwed and laughs nervously at the terrible situation. Suddenly, the building is hit by a powerful energy beam that creates a huge hole. The explosion lights up the sky and destroys part of the massive building structure. From space, we see the beam of light leaving Earth and crossing the atmosphere toward the moon. The blue beam of light crosses space with incredible speed seen from the lunar surface. The narrator reveals that the light beam from that day could be seen 4,000 kilometers away. Back on Earth, we see the soldier's hands all bloody and injured. With his body totally battered and full of stakes, he asks them to end him already because it hurts a lot. The soldier turns his face with an expression of pain and exhaustion amidst the rebel. Near his fallen body, a small flask shines brightly on the ground. Friday approaches and calls him Mr. Hero. With a tone of mockery and superiority, the commander then holds the flask and says that is a present from him to the villain. The villain is surprised and wonders what kind of gift that would be. Suddenly, several flasks begin to float around Friday, who watches them closely. Friday seems about to sneeze while the flasks float around him. Then the soldier sneezes suddenly, leaving the villain completely confused with the situation. He gives a slight smirk, looking satisfied with what just happened. Fallen on the ground and all injured, the commander starts laughing loud, leaving Friday clueless. The villain pinches his nose and asks what's so funny about this bizarre situation. With a determined look, the soldier reveals he just discovered that Friday isn't invincible either. Irritated, the villain gets closer and tells the soldier to stop acting like he's special. Friday then stares at him with a look of disappointment and total disdain. The commander then asks if he can make a call while holding a radio communicator. The villain thinks it's predictable, but the soldier starts speaking, introducing himself as Major Choi Baeyoung. With an expression of pure rage, Friday yells and asks why the heck he asked then. Over the radio, the commander says he discovered a very fun fact to share. He then reveals the surprising info that even the mighty Friday coughs. With a victorious smile, he says he'll leave the rest of the plan in the other person's hands. On the radio display, we see the name of Commander Yakin, who promises to remember that info. The soldier smiles, satisfied, and comments that he loves how direct his teammate is. Friday admits the soldier's attitude was a bit peculiar, but doesn't seem to care much. With a look of superiority, he says it was just a little bit and nothing more than that. He then asks if the soldier was referring to that special thing he mentioned. The scene cuts to a grill with grilled pork belly and coworkers. He continues the list with having a beer at home after an intense workout, or going to the cinema to watch a superhero movie with friends. With a look of disdain, Friday says none of that is special at all. The commander agrees, saying it was a normal life, and even his didn't have much meaning. He asks if the villain knows what that feeling is like, and he answers no. With a wide, insane smile, Friday says not to worry because it's all gonna end. With a bored look, the villain says he really hates a popular saying. The soldier then says that apparently, where the world ends, a new beginning awaits, and he finishes by asking the villain not to be too disappointed with what's coming. With a determined look, he points a stake at Friday and says fun things will reveal themselves in the future. The villain just observes the scene with a smirk, looking curious. The commander then wonders if he can't even do that and feels a huge sense of shame. With his nose bleeding, he says giving meaning to things is a hard way to live, but he admits there is one thing that still bothers him quite a bit. The soldier continues to stare at the villain with a serious, focused expression. Fallen amidst the rebel and seriously injured, the commander seems to have reached his limit. Friday watches him standing tall with an imposing posture and a look of superiority. The villain is confused by the soldier's words and wonders what fun things are going to happen. The scene shifts to a beautiful sunset with an orange sky and reddish clouds. The story then goes back to the fighting arena, where a huge statue stands in the center. The scene then goes back to Commander Koi's story and his days in the army. In a flashback, we see Friday with lightning around him and an imposing, challenging pose. We also see the statue of a muscular man being admired by a crowd of people. And finally, the villain statue with the inscription, God Friday, at its base. A fighter smiles insanely while crushing his opponent's hand with a powerful blow. Friday then appears with a smirk, looking satisfied with the violence. We see the kids the protagonist took care of with expressions of fear and anger. The villain then flies amidst a blizzard with a look of pure madness and destruction. The scene focuses on Friday's hand, which seems covered in blood and grime. The story then returns to the present with a building under a starry sky and a full moon. Lying in bed, the MC hears the girls say that human society managed to entertain Friday. She finishes by saying that was how everyone managed to survive until now. The woman then sits on the bed with a serious expression and a piercing gaze. She walks down the stairs of her modern, well-decorated house with an air of mystery. With her back to the window, she observes the starry sky, looking thoughtful and worried. The girl holds a lighter with a photo of two men in a relaxed moment. With a stick in her mouth, she stares at the night with a melancholic, lost look. She lets out a sigh of tiredness or relief with half-closed eyes and an unreadable expression. The woman then wonders if this is just a coincidence or destiny acting in their lives. She looks at a photo and asks her dad to explain everything that is happening. The story then takes us to a future where civilization has crumbled and nature has taken over everything. Just as the world changed rapidly after the incident with Friday, wildlife also prospered. The seasons were also affected, and we see someone camouflaged amidst the vegetation. That's when we hear a voice calling for Dawa, who appears sweating with a serious expression. A beautiful woman with elf ears calls him to go somewhere with her. With a gaze, the girl stares at the protagonist, expecting him to follow her.